Hello everyone, this is from Shiksha. Welcome to today's webinar that is hosted and organized by Shiksha.com. And today's topic is live interactive webinar on how higher education will change post-pandemic. We have our panelists with us. Our esteemed panelists include Ms. Deepa Dikshit, who is an Associate Professor, Chief Marketing Officer at Wellinger Institute of Management. We have with us Major Sonali Kadam, who is the Director, Skills and Vocational Education of Symbiosis Skills and Professional University. We have Mr. Manish Dalmia, the Marketing Director, NMIMS deemed to be University. And we also have Dr. Prasad D. Khandekar, who is the Director of Admissions at MIT World Peace University. I'll tell you in brief about esteemed panelists today. Dr. Prasad D. Khandekar is the Director Admissions at MIT World Peace University. He has over 25 years of teaching experience and 5 years of industry experience. He is a well-known name in engineering education for his leadership skills and for his efforts in improving industry readiness of engineering graduates. He is regularly invited for expressing his views on Indian higher education scenario at conferences organized by various chambers of commerce, World Education Summit, and different print, electronic, and social media organizations. Coming on to Ms. Deepa Dikshit. She's a PhD from University of Mumbai, Senior Associate Dean Accreditation, Associate Professor, and Chief Marketing Officer in Wellinger Institute of Management. She has over 20 years of experience in the higher education sector as academician, administrator, and higher education management, with a PhD on the impact of social media on consumer behavior in India. She has been nominated Linnaeus Palme Scholarship for Faculty Exchange to Mälardalen University, Sweden, SIDA, International Development Cooperation Agency. She has authored international case study, The Game Just Got Bigger, that won second prize and is accepted among the 10 cases from India as part of the Giving Voice to Values curriculum at Babson College, United States. She has mentored detailed research-based projects related to consumer behavior in financial products at the BOP, human hygiene product usage in rural areas, food sector, enhanced usage of khadi among youth, among others, from 2011 till 2017. We also have the honor to have Major Sonali Kadam as one of our panelists today. She is the Director, Skills and Vocational Education, Symbiosis Skills and Professional University. She has more than 10 years of experience in the domain of distance and higher education, and she has extensive experience in operational administration. Coming on to our host panelist, Mr. Manish Dalmia. I'm sorry. So coming on to our fourth panelist, Mr. Manish Dalmia. Mr. Manish is the Marketing Director at NMIMS deemed to be University. He's under top 30 marketeer in 2019. He has high impact marketing. He's a high impact marketing and sales professional. He's a higher educational specialist, a digital evangelist, and an expert industry panel speaker. I would now go on to give you a brief about Shiksha.com. Shiksha.com as an organization and how last 12 months have been for Shiksha.com. That is, between 1st April 2019 till 31st of March 2020, we had more than 335 million page views, more than 71 million active students visiting the site, and an average duration of 2 minutes and 20 seconds per visit. We had more than 140 million student visits in the last year. If you visit Shiksha.com, you would get information about more than 30,000 colleges, 2 lakh plus courses, and 600 plus entrance examinations under one single domain. We receive a healthy traction on our platform because we host detailed and comprehensive information on both domestic and international institutions to enable the right college decision for students. We have on our website more than 1,75,000 college reviews, a question and answer platform to answer all your queries, ebook and sample papers, study abroad counseling services, colleges and rank predictors, college comparisons, news and articles, and tools like Campus Connect to help you get a better review and better image of the college that you are dreaming to get admission in. Now, regarding today's topics, today's webinar, some of the topics we will cover are how important would be the course fee factor in the students' decision making post-pandemic and current economic situation. Also, as per our recently conducted survey, 60% of students have dropped or delayed their plans to study abroad. So, what impact would this have on the demand in the domestic market, in the Indian market? Which MBA specializations can see a rise in demand post-pandemic? And do you see a rise in demand for skill-based courses post-pandemic? These are just some of the topics we'll cover today. So we would start with our panelists. I would like to invite our honorable panelist, Dr. Prasad D. Khandegar, to start with the presentation, to start talking to students and educating them about how they can prepare for higher education for their courses amid this lockdown crisis. Dr. Prasad, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Prashant. Am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Prashant, for that wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, Prashant, Dr. Deepa, Major Sonali, and Professor Manish. It's wonderful interacting with you and be on the same panel, interacting with you and the students who are going to seek admissions in the current admission year. Good afternoon, attendees. I can see more than 150 plus attendees in today's webinar. All of you must be anxious to know what is the current scenario and how it is going to affect the admissions and overall higher education in the current pandemic situation. So all of us should understand that the role of higher education system in India is not only to impart education, but it is going to play a very important role in India's dream to become a 5 trillion economy. Earlier, we thought that we will reach there by 2025, but I think because of this pandemic, we may have to wait for 3-4 more years. And higher education is going to play a lot of important and critical role in this particular dream. Today's my views are based on my recent discussions with professors from Harvard, various US and European universities and Indian universities. I am able to make certain views on the present situation and how it is going to impact higher education in India. Now, if you see the entire space of higher education, we have around 760 plus universities in India, around 38,000 plus colleges of higher education. Altogether, there is almost 4 crore students studying in higher education system in India. Having said this, I'm coming to my first point, that is how this pandemic situation is going to impact on the input to the higher education. I strongly believe that even after pandemic situation, the numbers, that is the enrollment rate, will rise by 6% in higher education. And I have reasons to make this statement. I can see that a lot of continuing education programs will be enrolled by various top universities. There will be a demand for upskilling, and most importantly, as rightly said by Prashant during the introduction, international admissions are going to increase in Indian higher education system. At MIT World Peace University, I am right now seeing around 2,000 leads from Kuwait, Gulf countries, and various international, from various countries. What is also going to impact is the choice of the programs. The people and the students will have to choose from new baskets of programs. The universities and higher educational institutions will have to offer a wide range of programs, not standard programs like BCom, BA, MBA, etc. But they will have to give certain flavors based on the industry needs and create specializations in their generic programs. That is going to change post-pandemic. And I believe that in our university, we have introduced around 113 programs with wide open electives. So student coming into engineering can choose an open elective of music. Skills are going to differ post-pandemic. It is also going to impact the financial part of higher education. Definitely, the fee collection and the people capacity to pay fees on time will change, and universities and higher educational institutes will have to give certain concessions or installments in paying the fees. That is going to impact this year, and therefore the cash flow is going to impact. At our university, we are offering 22 crores scholarships to our meritorious students, and we have given 3 installments to pay their fees. Aspirants will also continue to prefer safe and well-known education hubs like Bangalore, Pune, etc. And obviously, the recent committee of vice chancellors have recommended that the entire admission cycle is going to get delayed up to maybe September. So this is the impact which I see on the input side of higher education. On the output side, that is the output of the higher education, I see that the industry will demand new certain skill sets. We have been talking about soft skills and life skills, but how a graduating engineer or a professional can demonstrate its soft skills now on the online technology platforms, that is going to be make a lot of difference. So industry, this is just one example which I can see, but industry is going to demand new skill set and certain soft skills are going to change. What is also going to change on the output side, the certain sectors will see dominance, like health, logistics, e-commerce sector will see a lot of surgency in their business. Certain sectors may see a kind of slow growth rate, could be a manufacturing sector. Certain maybe automobile sector will see a slow growth rate in next 2-3 years. So the batches which are going to roll out in 2 or 3 years time, I think they have to be given specializations in certain sectors so they are industry ready and job ready from day one. I also strongly believe that in such situations, government has to pump in a lot of money so that economy survives. Already few governments like Japan and other governments have started giving negative interest rates. I don't see that happening in India, but definitely government will give boosters to real estate, healthcare, and few small scale and medium scale industry. Therefore, the skills required by these sectors has to be delivered through the programs by higher education now. What I also see on the output side, post-pandemic, the salary package will see the disparity. Good students will get very high packages, but average students may get less average salary than what we used to get right now. Just to give you one example, our average salary is 6.5 lakh rupees and the highest salary is 37.2 lakh rupees. I see that in MIT WPU, the highest salary may go up to 40 lakhs or 45 lakhs, but average salary may come to around 6 lakh rupees. Now, if you see the purpose of education, it's not only to give employability, but it is also to prepare students for future life. If I just focus right now today only on the employability part of it, then in addition to the skills which I have talked about, knowledge and behavior is also going to play a very important role. And as I mentioned earlier, life skills by higher education system, and they will make every possible effort to deliver those life skills. I can also see on the output side, the new positions will be created in the industries. Already few multinational companies have started appointing chief listening officers, social media managers, chief learning officers. So I see a lot of new positions will be created post pandemic, and that will affect the placement scenario in a positive way. Now coming to what happens between this input and output, that's the higher education, that's the role of any technical or any professional institutions. I see a very positive impact on curricula and pedagogy. University will definitely start offering new programs with updated curricula, and they will also change their pedagogy. There is no way, we have been continuously talking about use of technology, but barring few top universities and higher educational institutes, the percolation of ICT in education has been minimal over the last 10 years. We will see a lot of change happening on the infrastructure in various higher educational systems. I also see another positive impact, that is online teaching will increase by at least 20%. Some of the institutes are going online using platforms like Zoom and other, but we at MIT WPU had installed Imparter systems 3 years back, and we did not suffer any academic loss because we had our own Imparter system to deliver our online content. But post pandemic, I see that every higher educational institute will have to increase its budget for ICT tools, and they will have to teach at least 25 or 20% of their curriculum on online platform. A lot of emphasis will be now given on self-learning through concepts like flipped classrooms or concepts like problem-based learning to product-based learning. Education will have to continuously update its curriculum. We used to do it when we were affiliated, maybe 3 years, once in a 3 years or 4 years. But I now see that every semester or every trimester, we will have to update our curriculum. I also see that universities will have to now establish centers, new departments post-pandemic. We used to have industry relations office, but I see that there's a lot of Prashant, there is a okay, that's settled now. So what I see is the organization structure of the higher educational institutions may see a lot of difference now. New departments will be introduced. We used to have industry relations office or training and placement offices earlier, but it will not be sufficient because the demands from the industry sides will be so fluid and turbulent and so dynamic that we will have to have a separate dedicated team in every higher educational institutes to understand the demand and make necessary changes in the curriculum and in the teaching learning process. Just to give you an example, at our university, we have established a dedicated center of industry academia partnership where 23 senior industry leaders are full-time employed, and therefore we are able to give 100% paid internships to around 6,000 students who come to us every year. Right now, when I'm talking to you, 560 MBA students are doing their online internships today, thanks to a separate department which is taking care of these industry expectations. I can also see another department coming, that is online education. A separate center of skills may be coming up in every higher educational institutes. And on a long-term basis, now India and higher education will have to focus on research and innovation. We have been talking about it. We have lost the bus to China for manufacturing, but now we cannot miss this research bus where entire world is looking at India for product development and idea to incubate. So every institute will see some incubators on their campus. That's a positive change I see. We have a technology business incubation funded by DST. We received 5 crore grants, and we are our own students. They have started 11 startups, one of which we got a prize from Central Ministry on its startup on cybersecurity. So in my concluding remarks, I would say that I see positive changes in higher education in terms of universities which will launch new programs, will allow the students to develop its curricula and pedagogy. They will only survive. Life skills are going to become very important. How do we handle stress in these certain situations? Value-based education and life transforming education is going to be the need of our post-pandemic. I see a lot of increase in use of ICT, even in tier 2 and tier 3 colleges now, and new departments that I can see emerging from this post-pandemic situation in higher education institutes. With this, my initial remarks, I conclude, and whenever the question answers will start, I'll be happy to answer any question any attendees may have. So thank you for giving this opportunity.
So much for sharing valuable information with us, Dr. Khandekar. I'm sure this would help the students a lot in dealing with this pandemic crisis. Now, we have a few questions from the students that I would like to ask. Uh, okay, so we have Mauresh Bakshi. Okay, I hope I have pronounced the first name correctly. Mayuresh Bakshi, I guess. Okay, so he asks, how much relevant is it to stick to particular discipline in coming era, as it can be seen that most of the present engineering problems are seen to be interdisciplinary, requiring knowledge from various streams of engineering and even science.
I fully agree with Mayuresh. The present choice-based credit system that India has also adopted, and many good universities have adopted that, will give the choice to the students to select open electives, not only from his own discipline. Maybe a student of electronics can do an open elective in mechanical, or he can learn maybe machine learning or cybersecurity from computer engineering. And he can also choose other elective like finance and accounts from faculty of commerce. So I agree with him. The world is multidisciplinary in nature. Nature itself is multidisciplinary, so the education will be multidisciplinary. No doubt about that.
Right. Thank you so much for the answer. And next we have Prakash Nankar. Prakash wants to ask, online classes and COVID-19. How will this pandemic affect teachers and their teaching methods?
Okay, is this question to me? Am I?
Yes, sir, yes. Prakash has
You
answered
want?
the
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, so some of the institutions which were not ready for this kind of situation, they initially felt jerks. They faced a lot of technical problems in continuing the online education or continuing the education per se. Uh, Teachers were, I think, by and large, barring few top universities, teachers were not ready for online delivery of content. I'll give example of engineering education. Most of the engineering institutes were not ready and were not knowing how to conduct practicals in the online mode. That's the most essential component of engineering. So they are not prepared with online simulation and their own videos. So yes, there are some jerks, but I take this as a opportunity for all of us to equip ourselves with online technology. We cannot escape that now. That is why I said that every higher educational institutes will have to spend on ICT, and they will have to build competency of their teachers to use this kind of tools.
Great, thank you so much. And the final question is from Shreya. Shreya wants to ask, after this pandemic and then because of this COVID-19 lockdown, what would be the effect on admissions and because a lot of entrance examinations are on hold now. So what would be the effect on admissions?
See, admissions will be skewed, delayed by around 1.5 months and 2 months, but the admissions will happen. The next academic year will start somewhere in September. Is this is my understanding of the situation. But even though it is skewed, things will happen in proper way. Top universities will give admissions based on the merit. In certain cases, if let's say undergraduate results are delayed further after August, then provisional admissions will be given in certain programs. But for professional education like MBA and engineering or pharmacy, I think entrance test results are a must to give admissions to the meritorious students. But in other cases, university may take a call on giving provisional admissions based on extrapolating their earlier grades and giving some sort of provisional admission letters.
Thank you so much.
So if I may add to the discussion that Dr. Prasad is already doing, so and just wanted to take an example from what Symbiosis has done. So at the Symbiosis Skills and Professional Universities, Dr. Prasad rightly said that there are options for students to take up provisional admission. So we ourselves have launched an entire virtual admission process. we had the advantage of having very strong technology background because we were already running an online education system with thousands of students already enrolled with us, both for online education as well as for online assessments. So for us to do that transition was maybe slightly easier because we had that kind of backup and technology in place. So for Symbiosis, at least I can say that what we have consciously taken a decision, and we understand that there is a lot of anxiety amongst parents and students. So we have taken the entire application and the admission process online. The filters have been put in place, and we have started doing technical interviews for our engineering students. We have doing PIs and GDs online for our BBA students. We have even been able to successfully launch a scholarship test online. So, but we were discussing earlier, and if, for example, if the government is unable to conduct any tests for engineering or so on, we are also contemplating doing an online test ourselves. So, these are a few things which I think universities will have to look at, and we will have to resort to technology solutions to find problems to how we do not delay admission cycles and also the academic cycles of these.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Major Kadam, for the input. And now we have our next panelist, whom I would like to invite. Our next panelist is Dr. Deepa Dikshit. So, Dr. Deepa, I would like to welcome you, and I would like you to educate students on how they can prepare and how higher education will change post COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, and hello to all the co-panelists. So I looked at it from the perspective of who are the stakeholders and how this post-COVID situation is going to impact all of us. One is, of course, the student community, the faculty and the institutions, and the third is industry, because irrespective of whatever the situation is, it's not a situation that's going to stay forever. It's going to certainly make some changes. So it's like you are never going to be able to go back to what you were. That is for sure. Because by now, each of us have stretched our abilities, stretched our capabilities, and learned to deal with the situation in many different ways. So just like, if I were to take an example of a rubber band, if you've been stretching it far too long every day, it's never going to go back to what it was originally. And that is the change situation that we are going to have to deal with. So from a student perspective, I think one of the important suggestions that I have for them is if the new norm is changing, then the mindset towards how we look at higher education, and I'm specifically referring to management education, that has to also expand. It cannot be the same plain vanilla approach that we have, where we do specializations like marketing, finance, operations that have their own merit, but students have to open up their mind and look at domain specializations, because industry is going to need a whole lot of talent in specific domains where that intelligence is available, so that they can move with agility. Agility is going to be the key, or the speed at which you respond to the given situation is going to be critical in the next couple of years at least, because this certainly has put us behind time. It has given us certain capabilities, but it has certainly challenged us and halted a whole lot of things and put things in abeyance. So when industry students, they are going to need people with what we call at Wellinger T-shaped individuals. You're going to have domain specialization, which is depth, and you're going to have the need to have horizontal ability, which is all your marketing and functional specialization. So I think students should look at programs in healthcare. Certainly, if this has not taught us the importance of the sector, then I don't know what will. But have a whole, apart from healthcare professionals, as in people who actually give healthcare, this entire experience has opened up a complete need for processes, for ability to reach out with care for people management in the healthcare segment. So the healthcare programs are the right kind of a background should look at engaging in, because this is going to be required not only in India but internationally as well. The other sector that I'm going to emphasize on is the rural sector, because this is where the whole of urban India is depending on connecting through its supply chain and through technology, both right from survival requirements to even sell or buy. We cannot now, while social distancing is great, we cannot afford to remain unconnected or disconnected between rural India and urban India. So there is going to be a lot of research and there has to be a lot of prototypes to connect both these segments efficiently. So you're going to have an understanding of how rural India functions and how it can far more efficiently. The third area is a lot of data has now come up. So analytics is an area that is going to see a whole lot of need, whether an organization, whether an institution, or whether students. With so much of data being available, you need to know how to use this data smartly to be able to make decisions. Like all of you, I have also been listening into a whole lot of webinars and a whole lot of uh, knowledge that has been shared segment, and leader after leader, I can important decisions. So decision making is a skill that I'm going to have to develop. So I'm going to tell students that these are 3 or 4 sectors. Technology is a no-brainer, any disagreement on that, but these are some of the sectors that the student community has to look at very seriously. The other aspect for educationists or institutions, I think 2 aspects I want to mention. I'm sure the others will speak about so many other points. One is while we are all moving on to the online education space and the need for digital, it's here to stay. It's going to be an integral or a hybrid part of whatever we do. Uh, but there is a need for us to also take a quick pause and reflect back on what are the good things that are being done in the face-to-face mode and how may we retain it, which means we ourselves as educationists have a huge need to reskill ourselves. While we may take in sessions, how may we make them more engaging? How may we make it more fun to learn? How may we ensure that that learning is happening at the other end of the wire? Is something that we have to really learn and understand to operate with efficiency. We also have to learn that if we are going to teach in a classroom, like Dr. Khandekar mentioned, that you're going to have students from so many different geographies in your classroom. As a faculty who's in a face-to-face mode, we are used to a more homogeneous lot from a particular geography. At is the maximum that most institutions in India see. We don't really have students from Vietnam and China and so many other geographies sitting in your classroom. That's going to change. If you're talking about real digital education, you're going to have people from so many different geographies in your classroom. So when I give an example, I cannot be not aware of that. I have to build in content, I have to build in my keeping that in mind. And the other point was collaboration with each other and collaboration with industry. So collaboration with industry, this particular COVID pandemic has opened up so many platforms for collaborating smartly with industry. And if we do, and I think we have, all of us get it, that if we don't do this today, there is going to be a complete disconnect between what industry is doing and what we are really educating the current generation to take up. So I think I would leave it at that and allow for my other panelists to possibly elaborate or answer some more questions that you may have.
Good. Thank you so much, Dr. Deepa Dikshit. And It was a really valuable insight into how we can prepare and what sectors and what industries would rise and what are of genuine importance to humanity. And this would certainly help students to choose which sectors, which industries to go for post-pandemic and how the whole scenario would change. I would now like to invite Major Sonali Kadam to give her piece of information, provide and educate our audiences on how to prepare and how our higher education will change post-pandemic. Major Sonali Kadam, welcome, ma'am.
Yeah. Good evening, and my fellow panelists. I think Dr. Prasad and Dr. Deepa have very nicely encapsulated the three verticals and the stakeholders who are involved. Just to summarize what they have been talking about, and I'll take that discussion a little further. So the first thing that has been saying is that the demands are going to change. It is going to become more sectoral. You will, what Deepa ma'am said, that you will need to be more agile. Multidisciplinary is the way to go. We will, as students and prospective students who are going to enter the higher education vertical now, remember that you are going to be passing out not today, but 3 years and 4 years down the line. And you have to be prepared for the new future, the post-pandemic. I'm sure it is going to become a pre-pandemic and a post-pandemic world. So you as students are going to face this world maybe 3 years and 4 years down the line. And you will have the time to prepare yourself for this new world. So just the first thing I would like to say is that do not have any anxiety. And we've been meeting a lot of parents and students, and we feel that there is a lot of uncertainty and uncertainty amongst the student and the parent community. We as panelists and as stalwarts and people who are in the education world, that as the world is preparing for a post-pandemic era, so are the higher education institutions. For students who are looking out, as was rightly said, that they will be more aware as participants with the post-pandemic era is going to open up a lot of sectors.
Major Kadam, ma'am, we can't hear you. If you can please check your audio connection.
And I'll shut off my, I'll do.
It's fine now.
Are you able to hear me now? Hello?
Better. Yeah, it's better, ma'am.
Is it better?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you now.
Yeah,
Please continue.
yeah.
We can hear you.
Yeah. So technology is going to become an underlying thing in whichever sector that you decide to specialize in. So even if it is a BBA in retail, you will still need to understand how data science works or how business analytics works, because we are moving in a world which is going to require a lot of technology. And what Sir was saying is a multidisciplinary thing. So we will have to look at a lot of forward-looking programs. So for example, within the Symbiosis Skills and Professional University, we are even doing a program in DevOps, because we understand with the way technologies is moving and in the post-pandemic era, there are going to be a lot of new developments which will happen, which will have to be quickly released. So these are certain job roles which will become more relevant, and you will have to prepare for these during your time at the university. The other aspect that we need to also look at is there is going to be an issue of continuity of education even after the post-pandemic era. And that is one point we may have to be very conscious of as education institutions, that even after the lockdown is over and we will have students coming back, then the mantra is going to be providing access to education with safety. And that is one thing which consciously institutions will have to take care of, be it at the level of hygiene or be it about social distances in class. And they also need to prepare for it. Another area which we will have to look at is Also, if disruptions continue, then how education will continue without students losing their academic year? And that's anxiety, I think, with what the demonstrations that we have had of universities moving to online platforms is something which is a lesson in itself. So parents and students can be rest assured that I think most of the institutions will make an endeavor to go online. However, as Deepa ma'am was already saying, and I speak from our experience of doing online courses, while we have been quick the learning management part of the teaching learning also needs to be looked at, and slowly the educational institutions will have to look at robust learning management systems which can deliver a blended model. I think that is going to be an area which the education will have to look at. The last piece is I feel that is a very important touched on it briefly is the industry. That industry demands are going to change, and the institutions will have to quickly adapt to it. The students will have to adapt to it, and we will have to work towards making a product which will be readily employable by the industry. So that is going to be a area which every institution will have to look at. We have been offering, so we are one of the institutions, the Symbiosis Skills and Professional University, that we are sending off our students for internships every year. So every 2 months in a year, and then an entire stretch of 6 months at the end. So you can imagine the disruption that happened with our students who were already on internships. But I'm happy to inform the August audience that we have seen a tremendous support coming in from the industry. Our students have now moved from on-premise internships to an e-internship model, where the industry mentors are hand-holding them because the industry themselves are facing a lot of have also moved to an e-internship model, which I think is a transformation which has happened and it is going to continue for some time. I think with this I conclude, and if there are questions, I'll be happy to take after the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Major Kadam, for providing us insights, and I'm sure these were really helpful to the students. Now, our next panelist, Mr. Manish Dalmia, he has been experiencing some connection issues, so he's not been able to join us as of yet. So I would like to ask some questions to the panelists, which the audiences have posted, and we can take the session ahead. So, and any of the panelists can choose to answer the question. Okay.
Sure.
So we have the first question is from Khushi. Khushi wants to ask, what are your opinions on effects of pandemic on advertising, media, and marketing?
Okay. See, if she is referring this in the context of admissions to higher education, then the advertising, the media, the entire budget, I'm sure all the director admissions will agree with me that the more focus is on social media marketing and online marketing as yet. Print media is out of question, still lockdown continues. If that is her question, then if she means that what are the opportunity in advertising and media, then I see a lot of ample of opportunities in that sector. So I have, I have perceived her question in two ways and given two answers to her question.
Okay, great. Any other panelists?
So I'd like to quickly add one thing, if I may. Yeah. Sorry, please say again.
Then please go ahead.
Dr. Deepa, you can go ahead. That is what
When
Prashant
it comes to advertising, thank you. So one of the things in advertising and media, there has always been this debate of the newspapers coming back, the millennials not really reading the newspapers. They are more on digital space. That's where the brands have to be. And at least in the education space and across brands, the spends on digital media have certainly increased. What it has really done is that it has increased what I will call as engaging advertising or engagement marketing. The newspapers have largely been passive. That's how they are. They're food for thought. So, if anything, today the newspaper industry is also faced with a challenge of how do they remain relevant. So they can either choose to remain relevant by continuing to put whatever they have put in the newspaper in a different format, because their real job is to reach out to the readers, the users, and be able to engage with them, and through that medium help brands and players reach out to their target audiences. So if they come out of the mindset of having to create a print paper to do that, and move on to a different medium, keeping everything else, the ethos of advertising and marketing alive, there is really no need. In fact, it's opened up so many more opportunities than what it was in the past. So I think if there's an industry that has got a far more smarter funnel because of this pandemic, it's the advertising. I mean, how many people went online to read their newspapers has kind of quadrupled in the last 40 days. So if you have all the eyeballs that you need, now what you do and how do you keep them sticky to what you're doing is really going to change the game. That's what I will say.
So if I may add to what Deepa ma'am is saying, we ourselves are seeing that the engagement that we used to have with parents and students have gone up almost 10 tripled, really. So at Symbiosis, for example, we've started a series, we call it Chai with Parents. And we do it with both existing parents and students as well as with prospective parents and students. And the kind of engagement that we are seeing just kind of validates what Dr. Deepa is saying, that the engagement platforms have become bigger and advertising has a lot of exciting times to see if they can adapt to this change.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your input, Major Kadam. Now, the next question is from Shambhavi Bhargava. Shambhavi wants to ask what kind of skills will be required post-pandemic, and what kind of unconventional and vocational courses will be offered?
Okay.
Can I take
So,
that
Dr.
question? Or somebody? Dr. Prasad, please go ahead. No, I'm
No,
after
Major
you.
Sonali. No, after you, Major. After you, Major.
Major Kadam, could you please check your audio, ma'am?
My audio is open. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Please go
Can
ahead.
you hear me? Yeah.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Major Sonali, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I'm just taking the speaker
Yes.
volume up.
Yes.
Is that
yes.
better? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So we are seeing a requirement for very sharp, crisp, short-term courses, which would readily get them employment in the market. We are also seeing, for example, we are seeing that the hospitality industry, the hoteling industry is likely to take a hit. But on the other side, the same people can be reskilled to get into hospital administration, front facing. So that there is a transition happening there. So, requirement for hospital administration courses, front desk for hospitals are suddenly seeing a rise. Similarly, courses which were, as we were talking about, areas of data sciences, being able to work with data, those areas are also coming up. So we are seeing an increase in requirement of people in data science. That's another vertical that we have seen push with. What we've also seen is that with a lot of
Major Kadam, your voice is not audible, ma'am. Okay. Meanwhile, can Dr. Khandekar, can you take on the question? I guess you wanted to answer that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, surely.
Thank you, sir.
The choice of selecting a particular program, let's say for Miss Shambhavi, and if she is asking this question from her employment post her education, then the answer is little different. But if she generally wants to know which sectors are going to pick up and which skills are going to will be required, then the answer is very simple. We have been talking about certain sectors like health sector, e-commerce, global business. These are some of the sectors where we will see a lot of traction in terms of employment as such. But my usual advice to any student seeking admission in higher education is please do your psychometric test, understand your abilities, select 3-4 options, and in that options you may decide to make a career. So don't go by the employment opportunity as such to select your higher education program. Please see what are your own abilities, where do you stand, which programs you like most, and where if you take extra effort you can see and do wonders in your career. So it is basically inside analysis before we choose any program based on the employment opportunities is my usual advice to any students taking admissions. Thank you.
So may I quickly add?
Ma'am, please go ahead. Dr. Deepa, please go ahead.
Right. So to Shambhavi, to all the other students, I would recommend a book called Ikigai. Recently, become popular. One of this, it talks to you about two things: things that will pay you money, and things that you may want to do for passion, and things that you're really good at. Okay, so it's really a Venn diagram of these three things. So you'll have to find a balance between this. So what skills to build is first find out what are the things that you're really good at, and which are the sectors or which are the businesses that are willing to pay for it. So for example, if you're extremely good at writing, there is always a lack of content writers, content builders across medium. But if you're extremely good at mathematics and logical thinking, data science is an area for you. So how do you pick your skill? Is you pick it on the basis of your capability, like Dr. Khandekar said. What are the sure short skills that industry is going to require? One is they are going to certainly need you to do your graduation in some domain where you pick up some genuine skills that you can put to action, put to use. So pick up and if you're an undergrad student, pick up undergraduate programs in an area where you build real knowledge and understanding, at least in one or two domains. Number two is communication skills are extremely important today. Whether it is spoken, whether it's written, and how do you interact with people. So these are skills that you have to constantly develop. Number three is you have to have certain level of appreciation for how the digital world functions. So whether you're into a finance background, whether you're into even if you want to be a psychologist for that matter, or if you want to be a marketing professional and HR professional, you need to be able to use technology, digital technology that is available to attract, engage, retain, and work with people online. So these are some core skills that industry is really looking at. Fourth is, are you able to think innovatively? And when we say innovatively, what it means is, normally when you are working on, let's say if you're coming from the field of science or commerce, you're used to certain parameters with which you work. Imagine one of those parameters disappear, they don't have any relevance from tomorrow. Let us say if this entire COVID situation, and I really hope not, puts us all in our home for another 6 months, a lot of rules will change. So in the scenario of changed rules, are you able to apply your mind innovatively and come up with solutions? That is what industry is looking at, because they are really facing different situations more frequently than ever, which was not like how it was in the past. All right, so if you're looking at building skills, I would suggest go and pick up some online courses, if not on offline, on developing these abilities in you. Ability to become more creative and innovative. Look at what are you good at, how can you go to the best category in that. Look at sectors which pay for it, and then if you want to pursue your passion, it may not always pay you for it. If it does, you're among the lucky minority, I guess. But then so you have to learn to look at these three things. So that's why I recommend that book Ikigai. It kind of asks you the right questions and helps you set your perspective right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your answer, Dr. Deepa. And next, we have a question from Pushan Joshi. Pushan wants to ask, Dr. Prasad also spoke about multidisciplinary education and gave the example of engineering and finance as elective. But how exactly will such a combination make sense for one's career in terms of potential jobs?
Okay. So the answer to this is, when you look at anyone's professional career, the initial first 2-3 years basically start with the domain knowledge. If it is electronics, mechanical, or maybe HR, etc. After that, as you grow up in the ladder of professional organization, a lot of other skills are required. And one of the basic skills any person will require is bare minimum knowledge of finance. Okay, whether you are an engineer or maybe you are from arts background, if you are growing up in your professional ladder, you will have to have certain amount of basics knowledge of finance and accounts. So in that context, I was talking that you should have additional open electives in your curriculum, so that you can explore your other knowledge gains. Apart from that, I would also like to say that this is not only about job. The
Can you hear
other
me?
aspect of hello.
Mr. Dalmi, we can hear you. We can hear you. We will be coming to you
Okay,
after this question. Thank you.
okay, sure. Okay.
Okay. So
Yes,
the
Mr.
other
Khandekar, please go
aspect of education, yeah, I'll just complete my part. The other part of education, which is very important for me as a teacher, that education prepares you for the entire life. And life is not only about job, it is about living. Like this situation, how we are handling. It's basically my training, grooming since my childhood. So therefore, if you are good in music or any performing arts, in such situations, you will be able to cope up with the life if there is a stress around you. Education also prepares you for that. So if you are doing engineering and if you have chance to explore your childhood hobby of, let's say, painting from liberal arts program, I think you should be taking that as an open elective if you get an opportunity to study in a university which, like MIT World Peace University, offers a plethora of options in open elective baskets. So that is what I meant. One is requirement of job, where you require knowledge from other domains as well. Plus, your life itself will require other aspects, so that you can enjoy your life to the fullest. Thank you.
Great. And any of our other panelists want to add into this?
Okay, I can just quickly say that situation, current students, we have in the last, I think, 15 years, have been in withdraw money. You could go anytime, anywhere. If you wanted to shop for the mango fruit at any time of the year, you would find it somewhere. So there has been everything all the time, and from that you have shifted to a situation where it is not everything, not all the time, not everywhere. So a complete paradigm has changed, which means without developing new skills, which is certainly what Dr. Prasad is also clearly saying, that considering you're from a generation which has probably not seen above or things which are not always available all the time, you need to develop skills to be able to train yourselves to look at it in different scenarios. And engineering and finance, if you were building a dam, or if you're building a hospital, or if you're building a structure, you certainly need to understand the value for money and time value for money. Without that, a lot of projects go wrong. So I mean, that's a direct understanding of, okay, if you're going to build something, and if you're going to need money for it, you need to make efficient use of every rupee as much as efficient use of every other resource that you have at hand. So they're highly connected, and both are highly connected in the way the mind works, which is largely analytical, as well as creative mindset is required for both engineering background as well as for finance. So they are highly connected, and one should look at this.
So if I may please add to this, can you hear me? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, we can
Deepa
hear
ma'am,
you.
can hear me? Yeah, hi.
I can
Yes,
hear
ma'am.
you.
Just to add to what Deepa ma'am said, so we
Major Kadam, we can't hear you anymore. Sonali, we are
Major Kadam,
unable
can
to
you
hear
hear?
you.
hello.
Yes, we can hear you
Yes.
now.
Okay, I was just saying quickly, I'll complete. So just offer a construction engineering and a management program, which is a multidisciplinary program covering project management, account.
Hello, Prashant.
Major Kadam, we can't hear you anymore.
I'm done. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. And for all the audiences, we have Mr. Manish Dalmia, who has joined us, and he would be taking us through his points and views on higher education with pandemic. So, welcome, Mr. Manish, and we're eager to hear you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Prashant. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Hello, am I audible?
Sir, you're audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, good afternoon, panel members. Sorry, there was a technical glitch, so I couldn't join earlier. So, Prashant, is there any question which has come which I can answer right away, or you want me to shed some light on some points which have not been covered till yet?
Sir, we would like to hear your piece of information first.
I'm not able to hear. I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear. Hello?
Sir, we'd like you to your presentation or your views on this topic, and then we would come on to questions.
Okay, so I am not able to hear clearly, but what I understood, let me just cover.
Manish,
Yes, ma'am.
can you
Hello.
just share your thoughts quickly?
Yes.
Yeah, Manish,
So,
this is Dr. Deepa Dikshit. Can you quickly share your thoughts
yeah.
so then they could address some more questions?
Yeah, I was just asking that what has been covered essentially. Then I will probably cover some more points. So to give a view on the post-effect of pandemic. So largely I have bifurcated between the global impact and the impact in the Indian admission sector, especially on higher education for UG and PG seats. So globally, there'll be a staggered kind of admission where they have multiple seasons, as we are all aware. In India, we don't have that flexibility, and hence we have to look at possibly like delaying couple of months in terms of getting all the admissions done. Depends upon the various universities and their processes. I'm sure that by now we have spoken on the way we have moved our pedagogy and the curriculum delivery via online tools available, and heavy investment in the ICT sector, which has for institution who have invested earlier, they stand to get benefited out of that, and others are also catching up very fast in order to disseminate the right quality education, and in order to ensure that there is no gap whatsoever in the academic delivery. Also, as we've seen that whenever pandemic happens or there is a great depression or a recession kind of scenario, more and more people probably stand to lose jobs, and is a case of skill upgradation, and hence there's a growing demand of a lot of online or blended kind of a curriculum which people can get benefited to, because end of the day they will always see that what is the industry requirement is after such a global pandemic which is happening over a period of time, the impact of which cannot be gauged in just the short term, but medium to long term, maybe 2 to 5 years. So too early days as per me to see that how much is going to impact, but probably in a month's time it will get more clearer once the government lifts the restriction from all the states, that how and what kind of adjustments we all have to make as institutions and as citizens as well. I'm more than glad to pick up questions, Prashant.
Okay, so a lot of students have asked questions related to no preparation of entrance examinations amid this lockdown. So, for example, we have Deepak Saxena who wants to ask, he wants to prepare for CAT exam this year. So, would it be safe to go for MBA next year, looking at the current global economic conditions? And if not,
Yeah,
how can we prepare for examinations this year?
Yeah, so there are two aspects to it. One is that what are the other option if Deepak doesn't want to go for MBA, because largely an MBA pool is divided into two kind of candidates. One is the experienced candidate and one is the fresher candidate. So if Deepak is an experienced candidate, then he has to see at what level of career he is into, under 2 to 3 years of experience or 5 years or plus 5 years, and what is the industry what he is into, and what are the chances of getting career leg up in terms of designation and salary if he pursues the MBA. So he has to evaluate the opportunity cost of either doing and not doing an MBA vis-a-vis just staying in the current job. Apart from that, if the other perspective, if he's a fresher, wherein he sees that okay, what is the impact? So 2 years is a good time in order to invest in learning, and by that time the market should be able to recuperate, because if the market is not going to come back in 2 years time, there's no certainty that the market will get well in 3 years time. That essentially there'll be a gap of maybe 1 or 2 years. So you never know that how long you will prolong your education. So education, I always believe that should be continued in the best possible manner available. Institution in the country, institution abroad, are all trying to bridge the gap which has been created by the pandemic in order to address student learning needs. Hello, I'm not able to hear.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, so thank you so much for your answer. The next question is from Shimal. Shimal wants to ask, why don't all the top universities which are going to conduct online entrance examinations use the same application so that the students can get used to the app better?
Good question, but a very difficult one to answer. The reason being that there are 995 universities in the country put together, government, semi-government, state, private, and deemed to be university. So people have different kind of application system and processes over a period of time, which has evolved in a certain way. So it will be very difficult to put together everything in such a short time and try to offer a centralized portal to one student in order to enable them to write the exam. And even if you see globally, there's no such system available apart from say a GMAT or a SAT, where they may taken care by larger and several institutions. In India, that is there in terms of, say, for CAT, for IIT JEE, for NEET. So whatever is available as far as big level tests are concerned, it is already there. But if for an MBA candidate, the choices are spread out. So he also applies to the top IIMs, he also applies to the next level of schools, and hence one has to go through the processes laid down by certain universities and institutions. It will be very difficult to have arrive on a one consensus kind of a platform where everybody can pull in and a student can come around. I think we are not as prepared at this stage for that.
No, I'd like to quickly say that in a manner, in India, the CAT exam, which is the largest, which almost every student aspiring for management education takes, is that common platform. As far as I don't know, I think Deepak's question is connected to, is it connected to the selection process post the CAT exam? Prashant, can you ask the
was largely a question on the entrance test per se, if I understood correctly.
Right. So if it is the entrance test, then really, the CAT exam, you can say, is the largest test. Every other test is almost, the population of students giving it is a subset of that. So going ahead, it's very much likely that, there might, the number of tests which people have to take for management education may be smaller, depending on the type of programs that a particular test actually caters to. For example, the XAT test, which is there, has certain elements different from the CAT. So you will see that there are certain set of students who give only XAT. They don't even give the CAT. So this is very much likely, and it will evolve. As for why don't all institutions take? So almost every institution worth its salt takes the there are and they possibly need some localized tests so that they can reach out to students, everybody who does not feel that they exam.
All right. Thank you so much for your answer, ma'am. And
that's all from my side.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the answer. And we have another question from Pratham. This is open to all the panelists. So Pratham has a confusion. He says one of my board exams is remaining, and I have no idea when is it going to happen due to this lockdown. And I'm also preparing for my entrance exam. So how should I divide and dedicate my time towards preparation of my board exam as well as the entrance exam?
Can I take that, Prashant?
Yes, sir. Please. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'm assuming that he is from maybe engineering side, the way he's sharing his concern. So my advice to him would be to focus on the entrance test as of now. Board exams for many engineering institutes is just the eligibility criteria per se. We look at the eligibility criteria for board exams, and we look at CET and JEE mains scores when we admit students in our university, MIT WPU. So we look at the test conducted by the government. Just to answer the previous question, also, I strongly believe that if you are running any AICTE approved program, it is better to consider the entrance test conducted by the central or state government or the government approved body, so that you can judge the merit quality across the nation and you know which students you are selecting. So I have answered both the questions in one go. Thank you.
Another question from Jasjeet Sodhi. Jasjeet wants to ask, can an engineering professional switch to healthcare management or hospital management?
Very much. I'd like to take this question. So we have a healthcare management program, and I can tell you that if you're a person with an engineering background, you certainly have a lot of scope as well as opportunity in the healthcare management space, right from project management, which is an an integral part of healthcare management professionals, setting up processes, becoming more, ensuring that the healthcare facility is more efficient. Then there is also, if he's coming from a biomedical engineering background, then you also have scope which are into equipment and more cost efficient equipment that the Indian market requires. So engineers have a lot of scope in the healthcare management profession, space.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you.
If you can hear me, I don't know if I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, Major.
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Here, sir,
Yes, you
the
are.
Symbiosis Skills and Professional University also we are looking at MTech programs, and within the mechatronics vertical we are looking at what Dr. Deepa was just mentioning, a lot of equipment, use of mechatronics, robotics, IoT in the areas of health sciences. We've also collaborated with one of the medical companies which are looking into data analytics. So as engineers, they could also be getting into the data analytics side of medical. So there are a lot of scope at the master's level for any engineering graduate, and even at the undergrad level you could be looking at areas like Dr. Deepa was mentioning biomedical engineering, or a purely mechatronics vertical where you may be learning about medical instrumentation and so forth. So yes, there is a lot of scope for engineering as well.
Thank you so much.
Can I come in, Prashant?
Yes, Dr. Prasad. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
We need to understand what do we mean by health management here. In health management sector will have a limited role unless and until you have a passion for biomedical engineering, and our body is the best engineering device anyone would have made. So unless and until you have a passion for that, entering into health sector management as a profession will be a challenging profession. So I think if he has interest in biomedical engineering, then there are a lot of other options available where we have very good German companies and Indian companies working in biomedical equipment manufacturing, and a lot of data analysis goes in that sector there. So health management, I would give 15% chance out of 85%. Rest I'll give 50% to biomedical engineering equipment design and development if he's an engineer, and maybe data analysis on like let's say COVID-19 situation. Huge data is being generated across the globe, and very predictive models can be designed by engineers to predict the future, and maybe that will lead to some possible solution also. So health management for an engineer, I'll give 15% probability, 85% to other two sectors. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. And we have next question from Atendra Biswas. Atendra wants to ask, pandemic will increase the international students in India since there would be more online courses and then students would not have to travel to study. Will Indian parents be willing to send their kids outside like US, Europe? Also, how about government's educational budget? Do you see there will be a rise in that, specifically in research? Currently, it is 4.6% of its total GDP. Since in future 50% of the courses would be online education, do you see a change in fee structure as well?
Who should answer, Prashant, according to you?
Well, sir, anybody can take it. I mean, let's start with Dr. Deepa.
Okay.
Okay. So as far as the investment of the government in the education sector increasing, I think the primary focus for the government has and will continue to be at school and college level, and not so much in the higher education segment. Now, in fact, with the involvement of IT, I personally feel that there might be a somewhat increment in that budget, because if we are really headed towards a technology led education system, or technology is going to play a very integral role in it, then you're going to have to set up the infrastructure, not just in the metros and the second tier cities, but right up to the last student that you want to reach even in rural India. So yes, you are going to have to invest more, but will that investment happen in higher education? I doubt. I think that investment will happen more at primary school and college level education. That was one part of his question. Prashant, the other part of his question was related to, I lost him a little bit.
The fee structure, as in, would the government assign more budget to education, to higher education, and
Yeah,
would
and
we
I
see
think
a
it
change?
was about international universities where the people will be open to sending their children to different countries. So this is not a situation in, it's not a forever situation. Yes, there will be a lot of what you can say care that people would want to take, and a lot of international universities do have online well set up learning management systems. So you will see a whole lot of students who want to study internationally. For example, if you look at the number of Indian students taking up online courses even before the COVID happened, whether it was the Harvard online courses or whether it was Udemy or anybody else. So there was a constant rise in that. So it was really about what is being taught and which is the university that they want to see on their resume. Physically not being able to go to that particular university is perhaps going to be the reality for the next few months, but I don't think that is going to stop people from going internationally. One aspect I think which will really make a huge difference and which has always been important is employability. And what the Indian student constantly is talking about is return on investment. So how effective is return on investment going to be given the current situation? And if you're going to pay your fees in dollars and earn in rupees, how feasible is that going to be, is something that they will certainly evaluate. That's how I view it.
Prashant, can I come in?
Please. Yes, Dr.
Okay,
Prasad.
so there are three parts to his question. Yeah, the first part is about going online. Not all the courses can be taught in the online mode, particularly professional courses like pharmacy, engineering, where a lot of emphasis is given on the hands-on skills. Eye-to-eye contact and the facilitating ecosystem in which teacher is also available and a student is also available is a must. So I believe in certain professional courses you can at the most go 20% online, where you are only teaching some application areas and giving a surface level knowledge that can be done in the online mode. So that will not have a major impact in the reduction of the fees, is I strongly believe, because as correctly said by Dr. Deepa, higher educational institutes will have to invest in the infrastructure to go online. But here I see a threat, which I've been talking in many panel discussions across India. A lot of back entries are happening in university education system from people like EDX, Coursera, etc. They are offering their online courses to the university, and many universities are tying up with these people. This is good for short term, but on a long term basis, if the university do not equip themselves or itself with its own good online course delivery mechanism, then I fear then they will become redundant in the system. That is a threat which I feel. And I also see that a concept of aggregation may enter into education system. People have ridiculed me over this statement, but I will keep on talking about this statement. In next 10 years, I will see aggregators coming in education sector, where a student will have an option to take 3 programs for Symbiosis, 3 courses from NMIMS, 7 from MIT-WPU. I'm getting 7 for me, just to selfish this thing. But a degree will be given by someone else like Uber or someone else like Airbnb. We have to be worried about that when we talk about online education, unless and until we go strong and establish our own capability. Otherwise, external predators are going to enter in this system, and we will see a different university education system in future. His second part about international admissions, if people are ready to wait for 1 year till US universities open, they have clearly said that no admissions in fall. They will only talk about next February or March. And if people are ready to wait for 1 year, I think those who want to study in US will definitely go. But I agree with Dr. Deepa that return on investment is a point of concern, will be point of concern for them as well. So that's about what I understood, and these are my opinions on these questions. Thank you.
Final question. So we have a lot of questions, but then due to scarcity of time, we will not be able to take all the questions in this session. But then to the audiences of the session, we would definitely forward your queries to the college and universities, and no, you would receive a reply to all the queries that you have answered on this portal. Coming on to the final question, we have Jaji Sori again, and we also have Boyana Krishna who wants to ask, can online education, especially higher education, achieve the desired quality and sincerity as on campus education? And what would be the effect on placement assurance post this pandemic because of the economic impact it's going to have?
Can I take this question, Prashant? This is a
Sure, sir.
subject which is close to my heart. Post pandemic, I see a lot of good opportunities for our students. But these opportunities always existed for students coming out of reputed universities. We need to understand that, because a course is taught in affiliated colleges, let's say Pune University in 116 colleges, same curriculum is taught by 116 colleges, let's say electronics. But why a particular college is rated second or third? It's their ability to transform the knowledge into students and transforming students into a product which is acceptable to the industry. That is where their strength lies. Now, whether we go online or whether we take any post-pandemic measure to correct our educational system, I think good universities will perform better and others may perish. So a university which is ready to take on these challenges in this situation has lots of opportunities. I mentioned in my initial talk, the highest salary will go high, but there is a possibility that the average salary will go low. So there is a good opportunity for students with good knowledge and skills, right skills, to get the salary that they can demand from the industry. But if you are an average student and lack skills, right skills, possibility the average salary will go down. So do not worry. If you are studying from a very good reputed university, you have fantastic opportunities lying in front of you.
To add to this, Mr. Dalmia, Major Kadam.
I would like to quickly address on the placement part. So, with like Dr. Prasad said, the Uberization of education. I think when I started the first session, rather when I started the session, I mentioned about 3 stakeholders, and one of which is the students. So if the rules change, the challenge of a rule changing is it changes for everybody. So it doesn't change only for the educators, it also changes for the receivers of education. So whatever sincerity or diligence with which participants imbibe that education, the rules of job placements are also likely to change. Already a whole lot of large corporates now use open forums to invite applications and to make their entire workforce more inclusive. So this whole thing about job placement, going to a campus and recruiting, I think the rules are going to change there as well. And the sincerity will therefore have to come from the participant as much as the educator, because you're going to be in a forum where you don't just have 200 or 400 participants from your own institution, but you're probably, being challenged challenged by 20,000 participants from 200 institutions across the country. So unless you're good at it, you're not going to stand a chance. So your sincerity will emerge from that. That competition just got bigger. And we have to get used to the fact that corporates are also going to change the rules as far as how they plan to recruit and how. So with that, I'll say that your sincerity will be driven by all these changes in the job market as well.
Prashant, I have a hard stop at 4:30. I think it's 4:33. With your permission, can I leave?
We are ending the session. This was the final question, as I said. So we are ending the session, and I would like to thank all the panelists for their valuable time, their valuable inputs, and helping the students prepare and tackle this lockdown crisis, this COVID-19 crisis. And I'm sure they would come out positive and have more clarity on how to prepare and how to deal with it. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all the audiences to join us today. This was brought to you by Shiksha.com, and thank you, panelists. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. All the best, students.
Thank
Have
you,
a
everybody.
great career ahead. Stay safe, stay connected.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.